Today, I'm going to talk to you about my table, why I chose to spend 10 times as much on hardware as my original plan, and the value of a notch. My original plan was to have a pop-up table, so that way I could have my swivel chair around here. But the problem was that the table had to be so long to reach where I was seated. It had to be the full length of the cabinet here, and that meant it was going to also block the entrance, which would be really annoying. If I needed to get in and out, I'd have to move all the objects off. Plus, I knew I wanted my switches over here serve as the hub, and if that table came up to be flush with my sink, that would obstruct the buttons and I have to reach underneath. As a side note, I put the switches here because it seemed like the most obvious for entering and exiting the vehicle. It's also within reach from the edge of the bed at nighttime, and I like that it actually has a blue glow because it serves as a nightlight at nighttime without having directly blue light shining at you at the bed. Lastly, you'll notice I chose inductive switches, partly because I think it looks great, but mostly because I'm by water application and they're sealed versus a rocker switch where stuff could get inside. I ended up going with a swivel table, which has a lot more flexibility. I can move around the space in different axes, but you have to put the components away somewhere. And so for me, it was obvious to make the sink cover the tabletop. To make the sink cover my table meant either having a shorter table or accepting the notch. And then I thought to myself, wait a minute, if design has taught me anything, it's that obstacles are often opportunities. So how can I use this to my advantage? And are they really that bad? I mean, after all, an artist palette has both a notch and a hole, and it helps the artist. And even the iPhone has a notch in it, and it doesn't seem to really hinder productivity. So how can I use this notch to my benefit? And it begins here at the hub, because this hub dictates the maximum range of motion of what the table can do. And we also want to consider where this foot goes on the bottom of the table, because that will change being off-center, where it can hit and what it can clear and what it can extend out to. When the table is above the sink line, it has pretty easy free motion. It can move all around. In fact, I can even take advantage of that notch and stick it more out of the way. The armature is below the sink line. You have to be aware of some of its limitations. But fortunately, because the thing is symmetrical, you can actually flip it and then get those other ranges of motions in. I realized there's probably going to be situations where I didn't feel like it was necessary to fully disassemble the armature and just fold it away. So I made sure to take in consideration to make sure the handle here doesn't stick out on the front side and the armature doesn't stick on the back side, obstructing the door. The tabletop is made of 2 pieces of 1/2-inch birch plywood, which also have low cork feet to keep it from jostling when I'm driving around. The smaller piece, as you can see, fits inside the sink, whereas the bigger piece fits on top. And one advantage of that is it obstructs the handle from turning on, avoiding the disaster of water flowing all over the surface and onto the floor, just in the event I forget to also turn off my water pump switch. I positioned the table foot so I could get as close to the swivel seat as possible, and also took into account clearance to make sure that the table did not hit the wall as it swiveled. Additionally, the notch comes in handy here because as I go around the corner, I can actually go in deeper than I would otherwise to give myself more walking room to get past the table. I made sure to also position the table so if I want to use it as an extension to my sink, it perfectly rests right in there. The table will also be positioned so you can have a person sitting either on top of the cooler, which pulls out, or at the swivel chair. Meanwhile, both people can kind of look out the door. And lastly, it can also double as a standing desk so I can position my computer to look out the sliding door. I wanted to have my switches as close to the front of the sink as possible to minimize reach from the bed, but also take in consideration not obstructing the switches accidentally by the table leg. And did I consider how the tabletop might affect access to the switches? You bet I did!